how to do it. But I didn't want to I wanted to give it the old Yoinkin twist, where you see something that's interesting and makes sense, but that has probably been talked about, but give it another spin, right? In that discussion, that topic is seeding bracket rigging. Is seeding a bracket, is structuring a bracket via results, power level of players, region, is all of that bracket rigging in some sense, right? And to some degree, sure, yes, it is, of course, because you want to have the best possible tournament experience for everyone, not just the lower level players, not the higher level players, right? We don't want Jimmy Two Shoes, Jimmy Donuts playing against the best player in the world for his round one, or conversely, we don't want you, Killerbot, or me, Beanie Thuggish, playing against someone from our own local scene round two of a 1,000 person major, right? So there's a lot of ways that people have talked about this and discussed this. The reason specifically why I brought it up and why I thought it was so interesting is because I saw this tweet from Perfect Legend a few days ago, and I see that Kizzy also made a video about it. I actually haven't watched the video yet. I don't want to watch it because I don't want to be swayed one way or another, right? I respect both of these two fellow Black FGC members, content creators, gods, super dope people. I respect them both, right? So whether they agree or disagree on the topic, I will say one thing. There is tournament structures that we as the FGC never really use. Everything that we use all the time is always, unless there's some sort of an invitational happening, we always use open bracket double elimination systems. There is totally other ways to do so, right? There's definitely other ways to go about running tournaments, right? And the reason why I thought of that is because I watch a lot of other games, right? Like I like watching MOBAs from time to time, League of Legends, Dota. I like watching card games, and I'm a really, really big fan of watching card games. And most importantly, I like watching games like Valorant and CS:GO, right? Where the beginning of their events are group stage, right? So group stage is very similar to what we do already, right? But the way that group stage works is you play it out, and everyone in the group plays each other, round robin in groups into a bracket, for the finals, right? For top 32 teams, top 8 teams, whatever. And that's really hard to do in like a 1,000 person event, a 500 person event, or 500 team event, whichever, right? But there are other measures. I did say card games as well, and I really, really love card games. I competed in Magic the Gathering, Force of Will, and Yu-Gi-Oh, right? When I was younger, before I got out of card games and fully dived back into fighting games, I was playing a lot of card games, right? I played Magic for 3 formats. I played Yu-Gi-Oh for countless formats, and I played Force of Will for about 2 to 3 formats, right? So I have a little bit of tournament structure in my head from other games, right? There's the group stage into top 32, top 16, top 8, which is kind of what they already do when you really think about it. The biggest deal is you're going maybe all the way across the world, all the way across the country, just to lose in your favorite fighting game, possibly go 1-2 and be out and not continue playing. There was actually a CLG event recently for fighting games where what they did was you just kept playing as long as you wanted. You just kept getting paired up, kept playing. And whoever had the best records at the end played in the top 8. Now, that's very similar to what people would consider round robin. It's not round robin. The name of that is actually called Swiss. And there's actually a structure to Swiss. The way it works is Swiss round 1, it is completely randomized, right? So if he's saying randomize the bracket and separate it by region, and that seeding is bracket rigging, what he might be looking for, instead of doing a best of, like a double elimination unseeded bracket, which sounds like hell, honestly. It sounds fucking hectic, sounds super crazy, right? Especially if you separate it by region, right? Because some of these regions of the United States are very big. And it works the same way, it probably works the same with a lot of countries, right? Where the vast majority of the player base that plays games is in one area, right? Like we have so many good East Coast players and West Coast players. We have some people from the Midwest, we have some people from the South, and it's just kind of all over the place. But the big draws of players, the big like amounts come from the East and West Coast. right? Just like when you think of Europe, people who play the most fighting games in Europe that are doing very, very well, they're either from EU, right? They're from not Germany. I'm sorry. They're from the UK and Britain and things like that, or they're from France. Those are the two regions you think of the most when you think of Europe as a whole, right? And that means that if you separate it by region and it's smaller per region, now there's going to be death pools of all the French and UK players fighting each other to make it out, and then this giant chasm of players from America, and then another small segment of players from Japan and from EMEA and from South America, yada yada. You see where this is going, right? So really, I think what PL is looking for here, before we even look at the Kizzy video, is he's looking for something more structured that isn't unfair to those at the lowest level or unfair to those at the highest level. Because the way it works is at the very end of the tournament, if all goes right in seeding, number 1 seed will always play number 2 seed. Number 2 seed will always beat number 3 seed, and number 3 seed will always beat number 4 seed, right? Usually it's number 1 versus number 1,000. Those would be the first. That would be the first match. That would be the first pairing in the system, and then it's 2, 999, 3, 998. You know, yada yada, so on and so forth. That's kind of the basis, right? And they mix that up a little bit when, say, I don't know, number 1 and number 1,000 are from the same region. That's your homeboy. That's one of your local friends. You brought him to the tournament. They kind of mix it up a little bit because Jimmy Donuts could be replaced with a different Jimmy Donuts, and it wouldn't make too much of a difference to the tournament outcome because they don't expect Jimmy Donuts to do well, right? And that's where the aspect of it becomes bracket rigging comes into play. So I can understand that. It is kind of match fixing and bracket rigging, but it is still a skill-based game, and anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. But the thing that matters the most is that there's already a system in place for this, right? And it's called Swiss. Now, let me explain a little bit more about Swiss. What Swiss is it can be used for any number of players. And I say that because I've been in Swiss tournaments as big as a Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals and as small as a locals, right? A local here in my town, when I played Yu-Gi-Oh! More consistently, would have consisted from anywhere between 16 to 40 people, right? And we could do 4 rounds to 5 rounds of Swiss, right? To determine who would be. The point of the tournament is to prove who is the best. Why does the bracket matter? Well, it's not just about the bracket. It's also about the seeding, right? It's about how they structure the tournament and attempt to maybe push people down. Maybe number 1, I'm fine with seeding. I am too, right? But I'm saying in this argument, what they're looking for already exists. But say 999 has number 1's number, but 999 isn't playing number 1. He's playing number 2. Look at that. Number 2 send his ass to the grand finals. He made it there scot-free. Number 1, send his ass to the grand finals scot-free, easy peasy. It's almost like a top player privilege. If you've already established yourself and gotten accolades and proved that you should be a higher seed, you are weighted higher than people who maybe don't travel at all and have 0 results. It's very hard for you to seed someone properly if they have very little results. When I played in online tournaments for Soul Calibur, they knew I commentated, but they didn't know how good I truly was. They didn't know where to seed me. So when they seeded me low and I got 4th, people were real confused. I'm like, no, don't look at seeding. Like, I don't play in online tournaments. Like, I'm happy I got 4th. I popped off making it in the top 8 because I honestly didn't expect to. I just like talking about the video game. Didn't think I was really that good at it, right? But that's a perfect example of seeding kind of failing. It doesn't always work perfectly, right? It's impossible. It can't perfectly determine the outcome of 2 human beings both trying to overcome one another. It's impossible. But what I was saying is, the first round of Swiss is completely randomized. And then from there, you start getting paired with people that are around your win-loss. Which means that if you play your first round of Swiss and you go 1-0, beat that guy 1-0, I beat him, well, it's still best of 3 or best of 5, whatever it needs to be. But you have a win on your record and your opponent gets a loss on their record, right? In card games, there's also draws, a little different. Let's just get into wins and losses, right? This is fighting games we're talking about here. You now only go up against other XOs, which means 1-0, right? Or you only do that. And then the people that are lower, they go against other people that went 0-1. And as the tournament progresses, you see where the people who have proven that they're going to win for this event, not for the entirety of forever, for this event, they are X-2, right? They're 9-2 for the day, or 13-1 for the weekend before top 8. That happens. And this is what they do for card games. As a matter of fact, that's what they do for Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals. For Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals, you need to have a specific record to make it into the second day. Swiss is cool. I really like Swiss. I think Swiss is dope. And Swiss works at the smallest of brackets and the biggest. It's kind of hard to do group stage or round robins because it takes up too much time. But for Swiss, say a tournament is supposed to last all weekend, right? Now, the way it works is the tournament still lasts all weekend, but everyone gets more games. And the beautiful thing about Swiss ladder tournaments, that's Swiss. That's Swiss. It's called Swiss. Ladder is Swiss, where you have 4 wins, I have 4 wins, so now we have to play. And one of us is gonna go 5-0, and the next one's gonna be 4-1. Now you're down with the 4-1ers, and you're playing the 4-1ers to prove that you can continue to go up that ladder. Yes, ladder is Swiss. People call it ladder because they don't know that it's called. There's a format for it. It's called fucking Swiss. And I think that Swiss would work perfectly well for fighting games. Honestly, if this is the take you have, if the take you have is that fighting games need to let go of seeding because it's bracket rigging, then maybe what you're looking for is not randomized brackets. You're looking for a randomized first round because that's really all that matters. And this also solves the problem, Swiss specifically, solves the problem of Jimmy Donuts walking up with his fight stick, playing in his round 1 and his round 2 and losing, and just sitting there for the rest of the event, watching the higher level players play, and maybe it's having a good time because, of course, it's a fighting game tournament. There's so much other things to do. But now I'm out of the bracket. I suck. So I'm out of the bracket. So I'm just sitting here now. When in Swiss, you can be 0-4. And if the cutoff for that day is not over, if it's 8 rounds of Swiss day 1, 4 rounds of Swiss day 2, and then day 3 cuts to the top 8, no problem. You know what that means? That means even if you are 0-2, 0-3, you can continue playing in that first day if you want to. A lot of card game players, the more serious ones, they drop. They're like, oh, well, I'm 5-2. If I lose my next round, I'm just gonna drop. And then they go 5-3, and they're like, yeah, there's no way I can potentially make top 16, top 64, top 128, depending on how big the bracket is. There's no way I can make that to make it into the bracket stage. I drop, right? But if you're a lower level player who just loves the game, wants to have fun, and wants to be doing something, wants to be hitting the buttons, then Swiss is actually a really, really good idea. And I only say that because I've seen it work from the local level all the way up to the highest level of competition in card games. They even use Swiss in Magic the Gathering. They used Swiss back when they were called Pro Tours. I believe they're called Magic Fest now. When Magic the Gathering still had offline Grand Prix, they used Swiss. There was a weird system in place where if you got top 8 in enough events, you became a bronze pro, a silver pro, or a gold pro, and you got buys in your first few rounds. And that's just kind of a privilege of traveling a lot and playing a lot and winning a lot, right? But essentially, if you just look at the entirety of Swiss, it makes sense for what a player like Perfect Legend is saying. He doesn't want bracket rigging, and he wants randomized bracket and separated by region. And guess what? You can do all that with Swiss. You don't need to do it throughout the entirety of the bracket and randomly see. But here's the problem. The thing that I mentioned earlier, there's one thing. The thing that I mentioned earlier, because it is computer-generated Swiss, they don't do Swiss brackets. Never, and they don't usually move around Swiss brackets. There's no reason to. The only reason why they would do repairings is if there's draws. When draws happen, sometimes they have to do repairings. But draws are very rare in card games. I mean, in fighting games. Draws are very, very rare in fighting games. And I think we have things to do for that make it so that they don't matter. Perfect Legend. Yeah. I like PL. PL's cool. Yeah, he got 13-0'd. What of it? It happens to everybody. I'd probably get 13-0'd by Sonic Fox too. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, back to the point here. Basically, if you're looking for a solution, instead of throwing the entire system on its head, you can just use another proven method that will work. The only downside is the thing that I said earlier about number 1,000 and number 1 playing each other round 1, and they have to swap that to number 1 playing number 999. The reason for that is because maybe 1,001 are from the same region. They're homies. That's your little brother. You brought him today. That's why he's all the way at the bottom of the bracket. He doesn't play the video game. In a Swiss bracket, that is just as likely to happen. It's actually more likely to happen than it would in a fighting game because they make sure they take methods against that. They make sure that you're usually not playing against people from your own region in very, very, very large brackets, right? Like 300 plus man brackets, 500 plus, 1,000. They try to make sure that if there are multiple regions represented, that you are playing against people from other regions, not your own, until later stages of the tournament where they can't really help it. Because guess what? You made it to top 8 with your boy. One of you's out. It's how it's got to be. I have horror stories of having to eliminate homies from, well, not eliminate, but knock my opponents, my local homies down from an undefeated record, or vice versa. I'm undefeated and I run into one of my local homies who I play every week at Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals, and we were paired up round 5. We're paired up round 4 because we're both doing so well in a 6-round event or an 8-round event where it's getting towards the end or towards the middle half where all of the very strong players are at the front end and you have to beat the other strong players regardless of where you are, right? It could happen in round 2, sure, but it's very unlikely to happen in round 2 because of how many players are 1-0 or 0-1, right? If I'm 0-1 and I run into my other homeboy who's 0-1, I'm like, look, bro, I gotta send you the motherfucking shot over Rumble Kick. You know what I'm saying? Hit him with the Glock, and then we move on. Because guess what? Even though now he's 0-2, he's not actually out of the tournament. Man, PL don't do nothing but bitch. I just thought that this was actually a great thing to look at, right? Only because of the fact that it makes it a lot easier to come up with something that's different for the FGC. I would love to see a very large fighting game event, as large as Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals has been, go Swiss. Because Swiss, it's a little weird, right, when you're not used to it. Because you go 0-2, you're expected to be out of the bracket. Now you go 0-2, you can still fight your way back into an actual winning position. If you go 0-2, win out, in a 13-round event, you could make top 16. Like, it is possible, right? You could do that. That's real. Ladder is awesome. Ladder is really, really cool. You can lose your first match, win the next straight, get into bracket phase, and win the event. And from bracket phase, it doesn't matter what your record is, because from bracket phase, everyone starts in winner's side. Seeding is a difficult topic because not everyone has established themselves as a name, and I made that point earlier, right? And the reason why I made that point earlier is because, once again, I play a lot, or played a lot of Soul Calibur, and I also watched the game, I commentated the game, and I studied the game to some degree, right? I'm not one of those super duper frame nerds, but I like to understand situations, right? I like to understand neutral, disadvantage, advantage, and situations that can happen. I like to keep all of those things in mind. And so when I got seeded for a low-kick esports event, second from the bottom, and I got fourth, people were like, whoa, Beanie's kind of clean. It's like, dude, I play this game every day. I just don't enter online tournaments. So they are forced in seeding to seed people above me. It's just how it works. You see a brand new face to the tournament scene. Okay, sure, yeah, maybe he's a commentator, maybe he's a streamer. But guess what? I have literally no results. If I have no results, I become bottom seed. That's how it works. I've been constant top 3 and I still get bottom seed and I don't know why. That's another thing, is that's your local scene or the online scene for whatever game you decide to play shitting on you, literally choosing to put you in the lower half of the bracket so you have to fight the killers early. Because if they put you as bottom seed, you are fighting number 1 seed round 1, and then you have to slog it out through losers. That is another problem with not considering what PL said. It's crazy, but in that instance, what you just said, Mr. Sup, is right. That is straight up bracket rigging. If you're making top 3, you should be seeded 1, 2, or 3. Like, it's that simple. That only makes sense. But if you're not being seeded that way, bracket rigging. And I'm not here to debate whether that's right or wrong. I'm just here to say that there's another system that actually handles these problems for you. You know what I mean? The only difference is you can actually choose if you want to add perks, right? Say you're running a tournament series, like the Magic the Gathering Grand Prix, the Pro Series, right? The Pro Tour, whatever they called it. Back in the day when you entered a lot of Grand Prix and you were registered, if you decided to take your Silver Pro perks or your Bronze Pro perks or your Gold Pro perks, you could legitimately get buys for doing well in events, right? A buy means you don't play a first round match, right? I'm sure you guys know what a buy is. That's his excuse on why he doesn't win? Sure, maybe. But it's still a very, very, very good point. It doesn't change anything. It's still a good point. There is the potential for bracket rigging because you're literally shuffling the bracket and then saying, you know what, we need to move this person here, this person here, this person here for a better tournament experience. I agree. It could be considered copium. But there is definitely ways where it's just it's healthier to have something like Swiss. You can't lie to that. You can't lie to that. The way that I describe Swiss is straight up healthier for both the minds of the competitors and for the actual tournament organizers. The reason why it's healthier for the tournament organizers is because they don't have to fucking seed. It doesn't matter. And the reason why it's healthier for the competitors is because if Jimmy Donuts over here with his fucking fight stick and he loves it so much and he's really bad but he loves pressing all the buttons, if Jimmy Donuts goes 0-2 but he wants to keep playing, he can. He can drop if he wants to, make the event slimmer, make it easier for them to pair up new opponents and whatever. But if he doesn't drop, he can just keep playing. He can keep mashing on those buttons in tournament, right? Where people are still trying to win. Because the big deal is people say, you know, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're out of the tournament because you can just play casuals. Not everyone plays casual seriously. And the reason why is because if you play casual seriously, you're giving away you're giving away the save it for nationals tech, right? But if you're in a bracket, you are trying to win. You are trying to do well. Pick up a new character so I can win Hitman against you. No, you know what that means? Look, I'm not going to pick up a new character. You're going to play against my Crusader and get beat up, and that's how you're going to learn. How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, Hitman? Right? So basically, if you look at it this way, you get to play more regardless. You get to play more regardless. Whether it's because you're winning or because you're losing. There is no downsides to Swiss for anyone. It doesn't hurt the tournament organizers because it's literally randomized. It's actually randomized. Like, the only thing that you have to worry about is, oh no, did we randomize it and too many people are playing people from their own locals round one? And you know what? Card game players have already gotten used to that. And it's something that as the fighting game community grows, if we start using something like Swiss, we can also get used to it. And I say that because, like I said, I've played homies, round 4, round 5 events. They've cooked me, I've cooked them. I had my friend flip a Vandy's emptiness on me to win the game, and I thought it was super scummy, and I told him about it at dinner. I was like, look, bro, I still made top 8, you still made top 8. Fuck you for flipping that Vandy's emptiness, though. Like, he made a whole board. Vandy's emptiness said you can't special summon monsters, for anyone who understands Yu-Gi-Oh. Made a whole board and then flipped the floodgate that did not allow me to play the game. For that reason, I lost. I was very upset about it. But we're local homies, so I got over it, right? And sometimes you're going to lose to that. Even in fighting games, sometimes you're just going to lose to that win condition that is just so hard to out. It's gonna shit on you. And guess what? It's going to put you in loser's bracket immediately. And if you lose one more time with that stress on your shoulders of, I'm out of the tournament if I lose, it's over. While in Swiss, as long as your record isn't completely atrocious, you could still become a champion. You could still make that top 8 you've been searching for this the entirety of you playing your favorite fighting game, or your favorite card game, or shooting game, or MOBA. There's Swiss. I think Swiss, if I'm being quite honest here, I think Swiss is the perfect format for small, medium, and large events that are dedicated to the sanity of their players and TOs. And if you like this talk segment, we've been kind of slacking on the YouTube content lately, but subscribe to the channel, like the video, talk about how you feel about Swiss as I described it, or if you have any experience with it, maybe round robins or group stage, and how you feel about current tournament practices for the FGC if you're a fighting game player. Talk to me. Put it in the comments down below. Anyways, this is Beanie Thuggish for the YouTubes, signing out and saying,